Hello everyone, welcome to Editorial Analysis. If you are new here, please do subscribe to the channel. Thanks if you are already a subscriber. Thanks for subscribing. Today is 31st August 2021. Today we will be discussing about an editorial in the Hindu newspaper. This is in regards to issues with Indian electoral process, particularly criminalization of politics and also transparency in electoral financing. Still hanging fire on transparency. As I said, this article deals with two themes. One is criminalization of politics. The second aspect is electoral bonds, which is in directly relation to transparency in electoral financing. To put it simply, money in elections. Okay. Now let us discuss criminalization of politics first. What is criminalization of politics? Criminalization of politics means criminals entering into politics and contesting elections and even getting elected to public office. What is public office? Parliament, right? State legislatures and self-government, that is local legislatures. To simply put, criminals with criminal background entering into politics, and not only that, even going ahead and contesting elections on party tickets, then going on to win elections and occupy public offices. That is what criminalization of politics means. There are a lot of disadvantages with criminalization of politics. So what are the legal safeguards against criminalization of politics? Before going into what the Supreme Court has been doing, let us understand what the legal provisions are in the first place. You have Article 102(1) and 191(1). These two means, or they translate into disqualification of an MLA or an MP respectively on certain grounds. Then you have Section 8 of the Representation of People's Act of 1951, which outrightly bans convicted politicians. But the leeway here, or the loophole here, is if a politician is facing a trial, no matter how serious the charges are, no matter how strong the evidence is, since he is still facing trial and he is not yet convicted, they are free to contest in elections, whether it may be legislative, parliament or local body elections. Now that is where we are facing problem right now, right? Now let us come to the Supreme Court aspect of it, right? Supreme Court pointed out that, or Supreme Court gave various judgments in various cases in regarding this. In one particular case, the Supreme Court called criminalization of politics simply an extremely disastrous and lamentable situation. They pointed out that this raises concerns about unsettlingly increasing trend in the country. Meaning, we are seeing a rise of criminals in Indian polity. So that is again a cause of worry. So this is Supreme Court's stance. So is there any basis for their statement? Is there any evidence that suggests that Indian polity is really criminalized or is in the process of criminalization? So to this we draw attention to the report or analysis from an organization called Association for Democratic Reforms. When they did an analysis of number of candidates, they gave a startling conclusion. One was their analysis, the Association for Democratic Reforms analysis, showed that candidates with criminal charges had double the chance of winning his election when compared to an individual with a clean record, meaning the chances of a criminal candidate with a criminal background getting elected has higher chances than compared to a candidate with clean record. Along with this conclusion, they also gave a little bit of data to explain how they came to this conclusion. In 2004, they saw or they noticed or they identified 24% of members of parliament had criminal cases pending against them. Again, in 2009 also, that number, which was 24% in 2004, went up to 30% in 2009. Again, when they looked at data in 2014, the number went up from 30 to 34%. Finally, in 2019, the number of MPs whom had criminal cases pending against them stood at 43%. Look, 2004, 24%, 2009, 30%, 2014, 34%, and in 2019, it stood at 43%, meaning 43% elected MPs had criminal cases pending against them. That is the scenario right now. With this data, we can say, at least we can point out that there is a problem of criminalization of politics in our country. Now let us come back to the Supreme Court aspect of it. What does Supreme Court of India say on criminalization of politics? I already told you that they pointed out that criminalization of politics is extremely disastrous and a lamentable situation. So they were trying to address this issue over a period of time. At least though the criminalization aspect did not take the form it is right now, in 2013, in People's Union for Civil Liberties versus Union of India case, the Supreme Court ruled that voters should have an option of not voting for any candidate. So how do they do that? If they don't want to vote for any suitable candidate, or if they didn't find any suitable candidate in the list of candidates, what should an voter do? So they said that voters should have the option of nota, none of the above, in the EVMs, so that the individual has the right or will have the option to exercise his voting right while expressing his displeasure over the field of candidates that were being fielded by parties in his election, in a particular election. So if an individual, that is an voter, eligible voter, doesn't find anybody suitable to cast his vote for, he simply can choose nota and show or express his displeasure to the political parties. So that is, he is exercising his right and also he is expressing his opinion. So that was in 2013. So again in 2017, the Supreme Court came and asked the central government, why don't you come up with a scheme where you appoint special courts? We know you have a problem now. You have certain candidates who are facing serious criminal charges, and the cases are taking decades to get solved. So they are using this opportunity to stay in power as long as they could. So the Supreme Court came and said, central government, please frame a scheme where you appoint special courts that are that their only job is to conduct trials and try cases which are against politicians and political parties, so that these things can be resolved. Right? So that did not materialize. Again in 2008, in Public Interest Foundation versus Union of India case, that is in 2018, the Supreme Court directed political parties to publish their candidates' criminal cases history on online. Right? They said, political parties, you are fielding candidates with criminal records now. What you do, you collect that information, what are the pending cases that this fellow has, and you simply put that information on your website. So political parties failed to comply with that order. So finally, it's like the camel broke its back kind of a deal. In February of 2020, the court simply said you should put the details of your candidates online. You should do it in such a way that if anybody wishes to access that information, it should be easily available to them. You open your political website, you put a big tab on the page stating that these are our candidates, criminal records, and it should be easily accessible. Don't bury it in sub pages. It should be front and center of your website. Okay. Second thing, they said that you must also state the reason for such selection. Okay, you are selecting candidates with criminal records, right? Or at least you are selecting candidates for election, right? So when you are selecting candidates, tell to the public as to why you selected this person, this particular person, and while you are at it, also tell why other individuals without criminal records could not be selected as candidates. Give reasons for both. So if you selected a person with criminal background, please explain to the public why you selected him, and while you are at it, also explain why you choose this particular person over some other honest candidate who is available to you. So that was the judgment given. So again, political parties could not comply. In the same judgment, the Supreme Court also said, while you are publishing these details online, you are supposed to give full pay, you are supposed to publish the same records, same information in one regional paper and one national paper. So what the political parties did, they found ways to circumnavigate that judgment. So while the judgment was being given, the court pointed out that if you fail to comply, right, it would hold the political parties in contempt of the court. But despite that, political parties did not comply. Now that is in 2020, right? The case, recently the Supreme Court said that they are going to allocate adequate time to discuss the issue of criminalization of politics in our country. That is the recent development. So the issue of non-compliance, is it new? Is it a recent phenomenon where political parties are failing to comply with judicial orders, particularly the Supreme Court orders or directions? So the answer is simply no. There are 2 or 3 examples. The first example and the most significant one is the Union of India versus ADR case, which was in 2002. Now during that hearing, the court directed that who are all the candidates who are standing for elections at that point of time, they were directed to file an affidavit declaring not only their educational qualification, not only their financial records, but also their criminal background. So the moment this judgment came, all the political parties at that point of time united. They went to the legislation, right? They went to the parliament, and they simply amended the Representation of People's Act 1951 to nullify the disclosure requirements, meaning they amended the act itself so that they don't have to comply with the court order. The court simply struck down that amendment stating that you cannot do that. That is where the independence of judiciary reigns supreme. That is why we need independent judiciary, independent executive and independent legislature. These are the advantages of having independent and free and fair institutions. Now, this has been the track record or the history or a brief history of Supreme Court's stance or stand on criminalization of politics, and this is what they have been trying to do. Now, what are the effects of criminalization of politics, right? It simply goes against the principle of a free election, right? There is no freeness or there is no fairness. If a candidate with questionable background, imagine if he or she gets into the office, don't you think the damage that they can inflict upon the government system, do you think it is going to be a small one? So that is an actual worry that one should have in their mind when they stay silent on these kinds of activities. Now, the biggest of all, people will lose faith in electoral process. In reality, many people might not have options to choose different people. For whatever reasons, they might have no other option but to choose people with questionable backgrounds into office, elect questionable people into office. The effect of criminalization of politics is not small. It is not something that can be put in simple statements. The impact that candidates or people who with questionable backgrounds can do to the office is simply unimaginable. Again, people will lose faith in the system. People will lose faith in the electoral process. People will lose faith in the government itself. So that is one effect of criminalization of politics. Now let us move on to the second theme of this article, that is electoral bonds. What are electoral bonds? Electoral bonds are simply the instruments that are used to donate funds to political parties. Right? Why were electoral bonds bought in the first place? They ensure that whatever the funds that political parties are collecting, there is some account for it, and the money that is going into Indian political parties is at least clean. That was the intent behind bringing in electoral bonds. What was the earlier system prior to electoral bonds? Prior to electoral bonds, there was a greater scope of unclean money coming into the hands of political parties. They wouldn't have any originating source, they wouldn't have any tracks, they wouldn't have any paper trails, and most of those transactions are under the table and they are dark. So it is unclean money. That issue was addressed by bringing in electoral bonds into the picture. Right? So how does the electoral bond system work? So the government notifies, right? These bonds can be brought in or bought from notified banks. In India, the notified bank currently is State Bank of India. So a person, any individual person, there are some rules that you can buy on certain days, and the numbers are denominated, right? You have 1,000 rupees, 2,000, 5,000 pre-denominated notes. So anybody can go to a bank and purchase electoral bonds, and they can donate it to, or they can fund it to any political party that they wish. The problem with political bond is, the problem with electoral bond, not political bond, my apologies. The problem with electoral bond is the person who purchases the bond, when they are funding or directing it to a political party, they can remain anonymous. They can retain their identity, and there is no provision or there is no requirement that they should reveal their identity to make a donation. So anybody can purchase and anybody can anonymously donate to any political party. When they are purchasing, the condition is it should be purchased through either a digital transaction or through check. So the source is definitely going to be clean because there is going to be a paper trail. So that is one advantage. Now the second issue is, if a electoral bond donation is below certain limit, the political party need not to publish the details also, stating that we received such and such amounts. So that is one issue. The third issue is, since the bonds are being sold through State Bank of India, even though the person who is donating electoral bonds to parties might choose to remain anonymous, since he is purchasing them through SBI, the details of the purchaser are accessible to the government in power. Whoever is in power, because State Bank is state owned, the state government can simply use its powers to check the details. That is one issue. So there is a real world fear that the government in power might use this access against somebody, their adversaries. Now these are the three primary issues. There are other issues, but these are the three primary issues. So what is the stance of Election Commission of India on electoral bonds? When Supreme Court was hearing petitions on electoral bonds, Supreme Court of India asked Election Commission, what is your stance? Election Commission of India went to Supreme Court and said, please don't ban them. They are one step better than what the earlier version was. See, the powers of Election Commission of India are limited in this regard. They said that we are not opposed to the bonds, but we are only concerned about the aspect of anonymity. If the court can find a way or direct where the people who are donating must identify themselves, that would be helpful. But that did not take place. The other issue or the criticism is that companies who are in losses also can make a political electoral bond donations to political parties. Again, there are multiple other issues, but the primary ones are, as we discussed, the three things. One is the anonymity. Second is the lack of transparency in the whole process, and lack of proper safeguards in that regard. So these are the issues in electoral bonds. Generally, the right way would be that people should know who is paying to whom, who is getting which money, how much money, from where, what, everything should be public. But sadly, that is not the case. So, as I said, there were other examples like the 2013 CIC case, but not required. The 2002 one is sufficient enough. So it is absolutely prudent and understandable that Indian public has the right to know how their political parties are getting money, where are they getting money from, who is sending them money, who is giving them money, where is that person getting money from, how are they getting that money. So they have the right to know, right? Mind you, money can influence decisions. When wrong people get money for wrong reasons, those decisions generally tend not to be in favorable of public. So again, the public are at loss of this. So that is one issue. Now what should be the way forward? The way forward should be the Election Commission of India should be empowered here. It should be given enough powers to act independently in necessary regards, either in the electoral bonds or the finance laws or the criminalization aspect of it. It should be given more powers to act more independently than what it is doing right now. There is also a clear case of lack of will from political class in our country that also needs to be addressed. Once they address that issue, the simple thing they can do is try to amend the Representation of People's Act. Through amendment, they can bring new law, bring in new changes that are much needed to increase transparency. They need to amend RTI to bring certain sections of Indian society under RTI, particularly political parties also under RTI, certain offices also under RTI. See, we have enough laws that are, if implemented correctly, can solve most of the problems that Indian society faces today. Indian society doesn't need new and specific laws. What Indian society needs is unhindered implementation of laws that it already has. Not only that, the courts also must try to ensure that compliances to their orders is maintained. They are monitored, political parties, whether they are complying or not, either by using Election Commission of India, by empowering them, or by through forming special committees that are entrusted to monitor the political parties' activities. Again, there is a way forward here, but what it needs is a push from all sections of society. Right, you need push from the judiciary, executive and the legislative, and also a greater extent from the public. So this is the editorial for today. Thank you. Hope this information has been useful to you. Please subscribe to the channel and follow me on Instagram at FunnyDheeraj. Thank you. Stay safe. Namaste.